I've been guiding hunting trips for over a decade. It's just me, the woods, and my clients. I've always loved nature, so my job felt perfect. Last summer, I checked into a remote lodge in Michigan. It was quiet, too quiet. Just me and the sound of wind rustling through the pines. I thought I'd prepare the campsite before the clients arrived. As I walked through the woods, the sun dipped behind the trees. I spotted strange markings on some of the trees. They looked like something carved into the bark, forming odd patterns. I thought, just leftover stuff from other hunters. It didn't worry me then. I planned to investigate more later, but I got caught up in the details of setting up for the hunting season. Days passed, and I heard my clients talk about a local legend. They mentioned a hunter who disappeared in these woods decades ago. From what I gathered, he vanished without a trace. The story sent chills up my spine. I shook my head, thinking they were just ghost stories to scare new hunters, but as I listened, unease settled in my gut. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed trying to ignore the silence pressing down on me. Every little noise outside made my heart race. I thought it was just animals, but something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Then whispers crept into my mind. I couldn't understand the words, but their tone was urgent. It was unsettling. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. One evening, I decided to look at those markings again. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, feeling anxious. The dark woods closed around me. I stopped at the nearest tree, shining my light on the carvings. They were almost alive, twisting in ways I hadn't noticed before. I leaned closer, trying to figure them out. That's when I heard it, something breathing behind me. I spun around, my throat tight. Nothing was there. I was sure I'd imagined it. Still, my gut twisted. I stepped back slowly, feeling that presence again. It was heavier this time. I didn't want to think it, but maybe the hunter's legend wasn't just a tale after all. I rushed back to the lodge, but sleep eluded me. I replayed that night over and over. Then, just as I thought I could catch a few Z's, the whispers returned. They were right outside my window. My skin crawled. I wanted to look, but fear held me still. What was lurking out there? I couldn't shake the feeling that something wanted to warn me or pull me in. I stayed awake, heart pounding, staring into the night. Each whisper felt like a promise or threat. I was terrified, and as dawn broke, I knew I had to leave that place. But a part of me was drawn to the woods, trapped in a haunting embrace I couldn't understand. The next morning, I decided to gather my thoughts. I brewed coffee, hoping the caffeine would chase away the lingering shadows from the night before. But the whispers, they still echoed in my mind, a constant reminder that something was wrong. I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air, and headed towards the campfire pit. As I sat on a log, I noticed the markings on the trees again. They felt more sinister in the daylight, twisted shapes casting long shadows. I couldn't shake the need to know more. After a brief hesitation, I pulled out my cell phone and started browsing the internet for any information about the missing hunter. A few articles surfaced. They spoke of the legend with a menacing tone, a man who had been consumed by the forest. Some claimed he was searching for something, while others said he had become something else entirely. I read on, feeling a chill spread through me, when I learned that a few locals had sworn they'd seen a figure moving between the trees, always just at the edge of sight. I glanced at my watch. I was supposed to meet my clients in a couple of hours. If I remembered correctly, they planned to hunt near the same area where I'd seen the carvings. The thought filled me with dread. I shot them a quick message telling them we should stick to safer ground. I got a response almost immediately, but my heart sank as I read it. "Don't worry about it. We want to be brave. We'll be fine." I wanted to scream that they had no idea what lay in those woods, but I couldn't. I didn't want to seem paranoid. Instead, I paced back to the lodge, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone or something lurking behind me. Hours passed, and my unease grew. The clients arrived, full of energy and bravado. They laughed and joked as they unloaded their gear. I forced a smile, trying to mask my anxiety. I led them through the usual prep, but as I suited them up, I kept hearing that urgent whisper from last night, warning me it was becoming unbearable. When we ventured into the woods, I suggested a different path. "There's a great spot over the ridge," I said, trying to sound casual. They agreed, but something felt off. I kept glancing at the trees. The markings were everywhere now, almost pulsating with energy. As we settled into our position, hunting sounds surrounded us, rustling leaves, distant calls of birds. I tried to focus, but the whispers intensified, swirling in my mind like a frenzied storm. Suddenly, one of the clients shouted, "Did you see that?" I turned to him, fear gripping me. "See what?" He pointed deeper into the woods. "Something moved, I swear." My stomach dropped. I scanned the trees but saw nothing. The hairs on my neck stood up. I wasn't alone. The forest was alive. That's when I saw it. A dark figure, half shrouded by the trees. It watched us, unmoving. My heart raced. The clients were oblivious, lost in their excitement. I wanted to scream, to pull them back, but my mouth felt dry. All I could do was watch as the figure slowly disappeared into the shadows. What was lurking out there? The whispers grew louder in my head, and panic surged through me. I had to protect my clients, but how could I warn them of something they couldn't see? I struggled to pull myself back to the present, but the figure lingered in my mind. The clients didn't seem to notice my unease as they laughed and talked about their hunting plans. I forced a nod, trying to stay engaged, but each time I shifted my eyes to the trees, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. "Let's get started," one of them said, breaking me from my trance. They readied their rifles, oblivious to the shadows watching us. I took a deep breath, reminding myself I was their guide. I just needed to keep it together. But the whispers became a chant, and I felt bile rise in my throat. As they set off to follow what seemed like a well-worn path, I hung back, scanning the area. I had to act natural, so I pulled out my map, pretending to check our route. But the truth was, I was searching for another glimpse of that figure. Was I losing my mind, or was something out there biding its time? The forest felt more alive than usual. A squirrel dashed through the underbrush, its frantic movements eerily out of place against the eerie silence. Then I heard it again, a faint rustle, but this time it was closer, almost as if something was moving parallel to us. My heart began to race, but I couldn't show it. I had to keep my clients engaged. "Hey, do you guys remember the story of that missing hunter?" I blurted, trying to steer their thoughts. "It's supposed to be right around here." They looked at me, amused. "You're not trying to scare us, are you?" one quipped. I forced a laugh, but inside I was screaming. They needed to take this seriously. One of the clients shrugged it off. "Come on, we're out here to have fun, aren't you?" He waved his rifle as if to challenge whatever might be lurking. My stomach twisted. As we moved deeper, the trees twisted around us, and the markings appeared anew, cutting through the bark like jagged scars. This time, I didn't just see them. They felt alive, pulsating with some malevolent energy. The ground beneath my feet felt wrong, as if the earth was shifting and breathing. That's when we stumbled upon it, an old hunting blind. We paused, curiosity drew us in. It was overgrown, nearly swallowed by the underbrush, but the crude wooden structure stood defiantly against the surrounding chaos. "Hey, look at this!" one client shouted, climbing inside. I hesitated, unease coursing through me. "It's got a great view. We should set up here." "Maybe we should just keep moving," I suggested, but my voice felt weak. But everyone was too busy ignoring my warning. They were already planning their positions, joking about how this was the perfect spot for their big hunt. I fought against the creeping doubt. Was I overreacting? Suddenly a sharp crack echoed behind us. It sounded like a branch breaking, but it was too loud, too deliberate. I froze, scanning the tree line. My stomach dropped. The forest felt different now, heavy, pressing. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, dread pooling in my chest. They looked at me, hesitant. Then I felt it, an icy breath on the back of my neck. I turned just as a dark figure stepped into the clearing. The whispers rose to a deafening roar, drowning out all rational thought. Something in me screamed to run, but I stood paralyzed, uncertain if any words would reach them in time. What had I led them into? I took a shaky step back, trying to process what I was seeing. The figure loomed larger than anything I'd ever encountered. Its shape was only vaguely human, outlined against the dim light filtering through the trees. I opened my mouth to shout, but nothing came out. My voice was glued in my throat, heavy with fear. "Guys, get back!" I finally managed to croak, my heart pounding. The clients turned to me, and I could see confusion mixed with disbelief written on their faces. "What are you talking about?" one asked, peering into the shadows. "You're kidding, right?" The figure didn't move. It stood there, watching us. I felt as if the forest itself held its breath. The laughter had faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. The atmosphere shifted, my senses sharpened with panic. "Just get away from the blind!" I shouted more forcefully, my instincts screaming at me. But they hesitated, caught in a web of their own bravado. That's when it happened. With a sudden, unnatural jerk, the figure lunged forward. I saw a flash of something crude. Was it a weapon? A branch? I couldn't be sure. My body reacted on instinct. I grabbed the nearest client, yanking him away from the blind. "Run!" I shouted, pushing him toward the path we'd come from. The others hesitated for a moment longer, still caught in disbelief, as fear began to seep into their faces. Then chaos erupted. They scrambled, trying to comprehend the command, while the figure was now moving, gliding through the shadows with an unnatural grace. I didn't look back. I just ran. Branches clawed at my arms as I tore down the trail, heart racing out of control. The clients followed suit, finally fueled by dread. I led the charge, but all around us the forest felt alive with dread. It was as if every rustling leaf carried whispers, echoing my deepest fears. "Where are we going?" one client gasped between labored breaths. "What was that thing?" "I don't know," I shouted back, urgency grating my voice. "Just keep moving!" The trail grew darker, the trees looming closer as the outlines of the hunting blind blurred behind us. I fought the urge to stop, to face it. There was no explanation I could offer that would make any sense. Then I heard it again, a low growl, echoing behind us like a predator in the shadows. It set my nerves on fire, sparking more adrenaline in my veins. "Faster!" I pushed forward, the clients just behind me, their fear palpable. As we stumbled over roots and broken twigs, I realized we were running blindly. We had left the marked path. Then out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something glistening in the underbrush, a glimmer of metal. I hesitated for just a moment. It looked like an old hunter's knife, half buried in the dirt. "Wait!" I called, but as I bent to grab it, a sharp rustle erupted from the trees. I straightened, terrified. The figure had closed in on us. "Run!" But it was too late. The knife clattered to the ground, forgotten as the shadows engulfed us. The darkness pressed in, and everything went silent. I felt hands on my shoulder, pulling me back, but I couldn't tell if it was one of the clients or something else. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart thundering in my chest. Panic surged through me as I whipped my head around. I was lying on the ground, surrounded by a tight circle of trees. Moonlight filtered through the leaves above, but shadows danced along the edges, making it hard to see clearly. "Guys!" I called out, my voice shaky. The only response was the distant rustling of leaves, like whispers lingering in the air. I got to my feet slowly, every part of my body tense with uncertainty. "Hello?" My voice felt small and thin. Another rush of panic set in. Where were the clients? Had I brought them here? I took a step forward, scanning the darkness for any signs of life. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I needed to focus. The figure was still on my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that danger lurked nearby. I turned back to the spot where I had passed out. I was looking for something, anything, to guide me. Then I noticed it. A faint light flickered not far from where I stood. My heart raced again, this one filled with a strange mix of hope and dread. I moved toward it cautiously, trying to control my breathing. The light grew brighter as I drew closer, illuminating the area ahead. And that's when I saw them. The clients were huddled together near a barely burning fire. Their faces looked ashen, and their eyes were wide with fear. "Thank God you're okay," Laura, one of the more experienced hunters, said. "We thought you were gone." "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wished I hadn't asked even as the words left my mouth. "We were running, and then you just disappeared," she said, her voice shaking. "We heard something in the woods. It was close. We could feel it." That deep growl echoed in my mind. "It's still out there." I glanced over my shoulder, feeling exposed. I could still sense the forest closing in. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, not the shadowy thing we'd seen before, but a wild deer leaping across our path. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. "Where are the others?" I asked, scanning the tree line. There were no signs of movement, nothing except the sound of the wind. "We lost a couple of them," Laura said, her face crumpling. "They just vanished. 1 minute they were there, and then—" The words hung heavy in the air. A chill ran down my spine. I needed to know what we were up against. I nodded towards the trees. "We have to find them. We can't leave anyone behind." "Are you crazy?" one of the clients blurted out, his voice quivering. "That thing, whatever it is, could be hunting us right now." "I don't care. We can't just stay here," I shouted back, frustration bubbling over. I felt the weight of responsibility pressing against my chest, and I couldn't let that sit idly by. As I turned to lead the way into the unknown, I felt a shiver dance across my skin. It wasn't just the cold, it was something else. Something was watching us, lurking in the shadows. And it wouldn't be long before it made its move. I stepped forward, heart pounding, determined to break through the encroaching darkness. The small fire flickered uncertainly behind us as I scanned the trees. "We need a plan. If we split up, we might have a better chance of finding them." "That's insane!" Laura shouted, her eyes wide. "We're safer together. We should stay put and wait for them to find us." I shook my head. "We can't just sit here. We don't know what's out there. What if they're hurt? We can't let them go without help." A low growl echoed through the trees, and my stomach twisted into knots. The sound sent a shockwave of fear through the group. "Did you hear that?" one of the clients whispered, his voice trembling. "Yeah, and it's close," I said, trying not to sound as frightened as I felt. "Let's go," I urged, stepping away from the warmth of the fire. The shadows around us felt thicker, the forest swallowing any remnants of light. With each step forward, my senses heightened, every cracking twig or rustle of leaves pulling my attention. The group grumbled, uncertainty and fear battling inside them. I glanced back at Laura, whose jaw was set in determination, but her eyes told a different story. "Stay close and stay quiet," I said firmly. As we ventured deeper, the panicked whispers of my group faded into silence. Each breath I took echoed around us as we moved forward, feeling the cool air brush past us. It felt like we were moving through another world, a world where the trees leaned in closer, concealing something just out of sight. I strained my ears, listening for any hints of movement, but all I could hear was the thudding of my heart and the soft rustling of leaves, and I wondered if maybe I was being paranoid. "Over here." It was one of the clients ahead, gesturing toward a clearing. My breath caught as I rushed after them, the sense of dread mingling with a tinge of hope. But hope quickly turned to confusion as we reached the clearing. In the center stood a small stone altar, ancient and covered in moss. Symbols carved into the stone were barely visible in the moonlight. There was a chill in the air that felt unnatural. "What is this place?" I breathed. Laura took a step closer, her gaze fixed on the stone. "I've heard stories about places like this, ritual sites, sacrifices." Her voice drifted into silence. The growl returned, louder this time, vibrating through my bones, resonating with the very air around us. Panic surged through my veins. "We need to get out of here," I said. But even as the words left my lips, a shadow moved beyond the trees, a shape creeping, impossibly large. "Run!" I screamed. But before we could react, the shadows conspired, and the forest itself felt alive, twisting and warping around us. The clearing filled with an unsettling presence, an echo of something that wanted to claim us. As we stumbled back, something crashed heavily through the underbrush. I dared to look back. That's when I saw it. It wasn't just a creature. It was a nightmare given form, inching closer with each heartbeat. In that moment, everything went dark as the world spun away from me. I gasped when I woke up, disoriented. The forest loomed around me, dark and oppressive. My group was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as I tried to gather my thoughts. What happened? Where was everyone? I pushed myself up, brushing dirt off my clothes. The clearing was empty, and the stone altar was only a shadow now, swallowed by the darkness. I listened intently, straining for any sign of life, but only silence answered. "Guys?" I called, my voice weak and shaky. No response. The fear clawed at my insides. I had to find them. I forced myself to stand, trembling but determined. I needed a plan, but first I needed to figure out which way to go. I turned slowly, scanning the perimeter of the clearing. The trees towered like silent sentinels, their branches whispering secrets I couldn't comprehend. The growl from earlier echoed in my mind. Something was still out there. I had to move, but I felt trapped by the weight of that fear. With hesitance, I chose the trail leading deeper into the woods. Each step felt heavy and deliberate, but I had to hurry. Time was against me, and the darkness felt more suffocating now. I called out again, louder this time, "Laura, anyone!" But the thick air consumed my voice, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. Suddenly, I heard a rustle nearby, followed by frantic whispers. My heart jolted. I picked up my pace, adrenaline fueling my movements. "Is someone there?" I shouted, hoping against hope that it was my group. "Yes!" a voice rang out, almost a scream. "Over here!" Following the sound, I dashed through the underbrush. I broke into a small clearing seconds later, and there they were, Laura, several clients, all huddled together. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Their faces were pale, and their eyes darted nervously. "What happened?" I panted, scanning the area for any sign of the creature. We don't know," Laura replied, her voice shaky. "We heard you scream, and then everything was chaos. We got separated." "What was that thing?" one of the clients asked, his lips trembling. "It felt like it was hunting us." More questions than answers flooded my mind. I tried to put on a brave face. "We need to stick together. We can't let it find us." Just as I finished speaking, a terrible roar erupted from the trees behind us. The ground vibrated beneath my feet. We turned in unison, dread clawing at our throats as we faced the echo of that chilling sound. Then unexpectedly, the ground shook again, this time like a heartbeat. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Laura's hand. We bolted into the depths of the forest, the trees rushing past us. I could hear the others panting behind us, fear mixing with desperation. We had no idea where we were going, only that we had to escape. But ahead, a fog began to roll in, thick and dark. It wrapped around us, making it harder to see. The sense of something watching us intensified, and as I stumbled, I realized that the presence was not just in our minds. We weren't alone. I turned back. That's when I saw it again, partially formed in the mist, stalking us. It felt like the forest itself was distorting, warping between reality and nightmare. My pulse quickened as I thought, this can't be happening. But it was, and we had no way of knowing how it would all end. My legs moved on their own, instinct guiding me to run deeper into the trees. I had to pull Laura and the others along. We couldn't let that thing catch us. The fog thickened, pressing in like the tide, making it harder to breathe. My heart raced louder with each step, drowning out the sounds around us. "Where are we going?" Laura shouted, nearly tripping over a gnarled root. "I don't know," I gasped, glancing back. The figure was still trailing us, a shadow cloaked within the mist. I couldn't tell if it was gaining ground, but it felt like it was. "Just keep moving." Branches lashed at my arms as we pushed through, the atmosphere crackling with tension. The whispers I had heard earlier returned, rising and falling in the silence like a chilling melody. "Stick together," I yelled, though I felt the truth of my words slipping away. Out of nowhere, a piercing shriek erupted, splitting the quiet. We froze, hearts caught in our throats. I squeezed Laura's hand, pulling her closer. The others looked at me, faces pale and wide-eyed. "Did you hear that?" one client whispered. Before I could respond, the shadows shifted around us, and the silhouette emerged from the fog, clearer now. It was massive, a hulking form that twisted in ways that felt impossible. I could see eyes, glowing, predatory eyes, boring into us. "Run!" I screamed again. This time it felt desperate. We stumbled over roots and stones, the world around us becoming an endless, tangled blur. I could feel the panic rising. One of the clients fell behind, tripping over a twisted vine. I hesitated, the instinct to help battling with the knowledge that we needed to keep moving. "Leave him!" Laura yelled, raising her voice above the chaos. "We can't stop!" The decision cut deep, but I turned away, pulling Laura with me. The fog began to thin slightly, revealing a path leading uphill. My instincts screamed that we had to get to higher ground. The creature's roar surged again, feeling like a physical blow. We pushed forward, scrambling as the ground became steeper, roots grabbing at our feet. As we climbed, I glanced back and saw the client who fell was gone. I turned my focus to the path ahead. The air felt charged with dread. We needed to find a way out, but the tangle of trees was closing in. My mind raced through possibilities. Was this a trap? Had the forest drawn us in with something more sinister? Finally, we emerged into a wider area, a slight clearing dotted with jagged rocks. It wasn't much better, but at least we could see. The fog lingered at the edges, coiling like a living thing. But then I noticed something. Just ahead, half hidden behind the stones, there was an old weathered sign. I could just make out the words, "Beware of the Watcher." My breath caught in my throat. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned, scanning the fog, knowing full well that something was lurking just beyond our sight. And that's when I realized a terrifying thought dawned on me. What if the fog wasn't just an effect of the forest? What if it was protecting something? In that moment of bleak clarity, I understood we had been drawn into its fold for a purpose, and whatever waited in the shadows wasn't finished with us yet. We stood there, all of us in silent horror, watching the fog swirl and shift like it had a life of its own. The words on the sign felt like a warning, but the weight of it was suffocating. "The Watcher," I muttered. What did that even mean? Laura squeezed my hand, pulling me back from the edge of my unraveling thoughts. "We need to figure out what to do next." Her voice was steadier than mine, but I noticed the tremble in her grip. "Right." I nodded, trying to gather my thoughts. I scanned the clearing. The rocks seemed to form a sort of barricade against the fog. Maybe we could use them as shelter. "Over there," I pointed to a cluster of larger stones. "We can hide. It might give us a moment to breathe." Without waiting for confirmation, I started moving toward the rocks, dragging Laura along. The others hesitated, fear etched on their faces. But then they followed. In the brief haven between the stones, I tried to catch my breath. I focused on the muted rustle of the trees and the erratic sound of my heart. It felt like we had bought ourselves a moment, but I knew we wouldn't be safe for long. "What now?" one of the clients whispered, his voice shaky. "We need to find a way out of here," I said, trying to appear more confident than I felt. "There has to be a trail or something nearby." My eyes darted back toward the thickening fog. A sudden rustling broke the stillness, echoing like a warning bell. We all froze again, every muscle tensed. And that's when I saw movement, dark and chaotic, slipping between the trees. The outline was massive, part of it lost in the mist. A long, low growl reverberated through the clearing, the sound rattling in my chest. I glanced at each of their faces, fear, confusion, and a hint of desperation. "We have to move," I urged, pushing them forward. As we moved, the fog started to creep closer, tendrils swirling around our feet like fingers grasping for our ankles. I could feel the oppressive presence closing in. We picked up speed, not daring to look back. Suddenly, one of the rocks shifted underfoot. I stumbled, catching myself just before I fell. My heart sank as I looked down. It wasn't just a rock. It was something else, something wrong. I could see the dull glint of metal. "What is it?" Laura asked, her voice barely a whisper. I crouched, brushing aside the dirt and leaves. My heart dropped when I uncovered the object, a rusted old knife, its blade dull but still menacing. My breath hitched. What happened here? I thought, feeling a chill creeping down my spine. Before I could process it completely, a shadow leapt from the edge of the clearing, lunging toward us. I yanked Laura back just as the creature's form collided with the rocks, making them tremble. Fear coursed through me. "Run!" I screamed again, sprinting as adrenaline surged. The creature's eyes glimmered in the fog. We dashed toward the tree line, the sounds of snarls echoing behind us. In the distance, I saw a faint light through the trees, a promise of escape. Hope surged within me. This way, I think I see a way out. But then, the ground beneath me gave way. I stumbled, gasping, as I plummeted into darkness, the light slipping from view. The last thing I heard was the quiet whisper of the fog closing in, and the echo of the creature's roar. Then everything went dark. I came to in a thicket of leaves and moss, the air thick with damp earth and decay. My head throbbed, and confusion clouded my mind as I sat up, shaking off the disorientation. I was no longer in the clearing. The forest enveloped me, but the dense fog had receded slightly, revealing a twisted path ahead. The giant trees seemed to loom closer, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. "Laura," I called weakly, but my voice echoed back hollowly through the woods. Panic clawed at the edges of my thoughts. Had I truly lost everyone? I recalled their faces, etched with fear, moments before the creature descended upon us. Gritting my teeth against that paralyzing dread, I pushed myself to my feet. Cautiously, I chose the narrow trail winding to my left. A gut feeling pushed me forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by uncertainty. I took a brief moment to gather my bearings and forced myself to focus on my surroundings. Sounds of the forest returned, the whispering winds, the rustling leaves, but beneath it all, I sensed something else, a deep pulse that resonated like a heartbeat. After what felt like hours, I stumbled upon a small clearing, the ground littered with remnants of past hunters, rusted traps and tattered gear, reminders of those who had come before. A heavy sorrow settled in my chest. They had all been drawn here like I had, and now so many had vanished without a trace. I turned to scan the trees surrounding me, hoping for a sign, a trace of my group. Suddenly I caught movement near an old, overgrown path leading into a denser part of the forest. My heart quickened. It could be them. I hastened toward it, branches snapping underfoot, calling out their names. There was no response, just the rising tension in the air. The deeper I went, the more oppressive it became. The whispers returned, swirling around me like a storm, increasing in urgency. I had to block them out, had to focus. My thoughts turned to a flicker of light I thought I saw earlier, the same flicker that had beckoned me previously. No, I breathed, it can't just be the fog. As I turned to retrace my steps, I caught sight of a familiar figure standing still at the edge of the clearing. "Laura?" I choked out, my voice strained. But as I approached, I realized it wasn't her. The silhouette twisted and moved, sending ice through my veins. It wasn't just human. It was warped, almost grotesque, shadowed by the trees. Fear surged once more, propelling me to turn back. I pushed further down the old path, my breath quickening, lungs burning. I had to get away from whatever that creature was. Bit by bit, I abandoned thoughts of my group, of the knife, of everything that had brought me here. Just escape. Then, as if in response to my resolve, the fog thickened anew, curling around my ankles and pulling at me. I stumbled, my heart reeling. Panic fought for dominance, and just as I felt despair, a burst of adrenaline surged through me. "I'm not done yet!" I shouted into the void, a powerful anger fueling the chant against the nightmares closing in. In that moment, my legs responded, propelling me further along the narrow trail as shadows danced just beyond the edges of my vision. I finally broke free from the trees and found myself on the edge of a tall ravine. Below me, something glimmered, faint and inviting. It flickered like the lights I might have imagined earlier. Ignoring the pain in my side, I glanced back at the looming darkness behind. No sign of that thing. Tension turned to determination. I climbed down the rocky ledge carefully, gripping the stones that framed the descent. I had to keep moving, had to see if there were others. I took a breath and jumped to the bottom. Pain shot through my legs, but I pushed through, seeking that light. As I ventured deeper into a hidden cave, I was met with an astonishing sight. A cavern filled with faint luminescence. Crystals from the walls twinkled, shedding a soft glow. This must be where the previous hunters came to hide. I could almost hear their echoes, their laughter drawn from the recesses of time. But then a chill traveled through me as I realized I wasn't alone. Through the glimmering formations, I saw shapes moving, silhouettes caught between the light and shadow. Was it my group? Were they safe? I stepped closer, desperate to reach them, hands outstretched, but the moment I crossed the threshold, the warmth faded, leaving only unnerving whispers in my ears. I halted, struck by the realization that in that cave the truth remained elusive, dangling just out of reach. Were they real, or had the forest claimed me too? They turned toward me, their faces caught between fear and familiarity. "Help us," they beckoned, but as I reached out the light flickered violently, shadows seeping over them. I staggered back, the gnawing terror clawing into my mind. I had escaped, but at what cost? The darkness behind me surged once more. Suddenly there were voices, not the whispers of despair, but my clients calling to me from the shadows. "We need you. Come back," they echoed, pulling me back against the insidious pull of the fog. I spun around only to feel the earth quake below me. My heart raced. How do I reconcile this? A part of me desperately sought for closure, but with every breath, those questions deepened, the answers slipping away like the elusive light. As I started to retreat further into the cave, unsure of what awaited me, I realized with unsettling clarity that whatever had been unleashed in those woods still lingered. Something had been awakened. It felt alive and determining. I wasn't sure if I'd find my friends or simply return to the spiral of madness. But I knew one thing. The story would continue, not just for me, but for anyone who dared to find answers in this dark embrace of the wilderness that thrived on secrets left unspoken.